Well, hi everyone. Just thought I'd follow up from my bird box building video that I did the other day down in the workshop where I showed the process of cutting and screwing together the boards. I just wanted to follow up with a video showing the bird boxes in their completed stage and talk a little bit more about the dimensions of the boxes. As I mentioned, these are boxes that are designed specifically for tree swallows and bluebirds, eastern bluebirds. And they're basically very similar, they're just slightly different in size, and I'll explain a bit of that. This was the box that I built for most of my life, and I still build. It's a very good box. There's really nothing wrong with it at all. It's built entirely out of 1x6 pine. This box has the sideboards wedged between the front and the back board, and this creates a situation where it's best to have a sideboard that swings out. And this allows you to clean the old nesting material out. It also allows you to check on the babies as they grow and check for things like blowfly larvae to remove them if need be. Now this box, I would probably put a stick on the back of it, a 1x3 or even a 2x4, and mount it onto a post. You could also mount that board onto the side of a building if you had a building that was in a good location. All these boxes share a similar entrance hole size. It's a 1.5 inch diameter hole, and that's very important. You don't want to have a 1 inch hole, and you don't want to have a 2 inch hole, because different birds will utilize the box if you do that. This box I've also built with a little gap on each side below the roof just to allow for ventilation on those hot days. The bottoms of all these boxes have the floors cut off on the corners just a little bit, and in some cases I'll drill some small holes in the center too. This allows for drainage in case water ever got into the entrance hole during a heavy downpour, for example. It also allows for air to more freely flow through the box between the bottom and the top. Now, a number of years ago I was reading more stuff about tree swallow box design online, and there were a number of authors that suggested that ideally, tree swallows will have a larger floor than, for example, that box provides, and especially larger than some very poorly designed boxes often have, like a 4x4 inch floor or a 3x4 inch floor. Those are obviously way too small. I don't believe the floor in the one I just showed you is too small, but these ones have an even larger floor. And the reason they're able to have a larger floor is that instead of being built with all 1x6, these are built with 1x6 as well as 1x8. In this box design, the back, floor, and front boards are wedged between the side boards, and this allows for a front opening design box. So this one opens on the front. But the thing about this box is you'll notice compared to the other box, it does have a larger floor size. So the bigger box here has a bottom floor of about 30 square inches, and the smaller box has about 22 square inches. But again, I think the smaller box here is still totally adequate. This other box is the same as this box I've been just showing you, except it has a few different designs. It's got a larger overhang on the roof, but that's about it. With all these boxes, I cut narrow grooves, as I showed in my previous video, under the nest hole just to allow young to have something to grip onto as they grow and start to move towards the nest hole to eventually leave. And the bottoms of the floors have corners cut off and small holes in the middle, usually for drainage in case a lot of water gets into the nest box at one time or another. As far as other dimensions, these boxes typically have a front that's about 9 or 9.5 inches in height. The back is 10 or 11 inches in height. Those dimensions aren't that important. The more important dimensions are the nest hole, the entrance hole, which is 1.5 inches in diameter, as I mentioned. The other important dimension is the distance from the bottom of the hole to the top of the floor. And ideally that should be 5 to 5.5 inches at least. The reason for that is because you don't want the nest to be too close to the entrance hole, because then birds like starlings could get their head in there and potentially injure the babies if they can stab down at the babies. If there's a fair distance down to the nest, that's preferable than having too short a box. For example, if this was a 6-inch high front and the nest hole was, you know, at 5 inches high or something, or 4 inches high, it would be even worse. So you want that 5.5-inch space there between the top of the floor and the bottom of the entrance hole. I also recess my floors a little bit upwards. This just helps prevent rainwater when it comes down the side of the box from going into the side edge of the floor. When the floor is recessed like this, it tends to just drip off the edges of the side or the front or the back, and doesn't affect the cut edge of the floor itself. I often extend the roof over the back, and I'll cut a little groove underneath the edge of the roof here as a drip edge, so when water comes off the roof here at all on this end, then it hits this drip edge and falls off instead of going under the roof and into the box. And I put that on all the roofs that I make that hang over the back of the box. You'll also note these two boxes here, I've extended the backboard down just to so I can use it as the mounting board onto a post. This one, as I mentioned, I would put another little stick or board onto it. And if you use a stick on the back or a board, you want to make sure the screws don't go into the nesting area at all. You can build this with a flat top or a slightly steeper slope, all your preference. You do want to have this hang out enough to provide some decent protection to the nest hole. You don't want it out too far though to interfere with their flying into the nest hole. So I'm usually out about 2.5 inches or so. Anyhow, I hope that gives you a few more of the details about these boxes and how I constructed them, and maybe you'll have some interest to go out and make some of your own.